Much, Mr. Chairman. I thank the Minister for that contribution to the debate, but what the Minister didn't address was the core question that Annette King asked him, which is, why so long, Minister? Why has this bill taken so long to progress from when it was first proposed as an idea to when the Labour Party proposed it back in 2011 to when the Honourable Tariana Turia introduced this legislation in 2013. Why are we now, in 2016, only at the committee stage? And I'd like to propose a few reasons why I think that is the case. The first is that the Honourable Tariana Turia is no longer in this Parliament and is no longer the Minister in charge of this bill. The National Party had no interest at all in legislation designed to reduce the harm caused by tobacco. For years and years and years, they railed against changes that were made by successive Labour governments. They did nothing to reduce the harm caused by tobacco when they were in government in the 1990s. And at every opportunity, they campaigned against parties and MPs who introduced or supported legislation to reduce the harm caused by tobacco. Now, that only changed when they entered a relationship with the Māori Party. And good on Tariana Turia for her efforts. She championed getting rid of tobacco displays, she championed increasing the excise tax, and she championed introducing plain packs or standardised packs, as we now talk about. And that all came to a halt when Tariana Turia left. And that speaks loudly, I think, to the National Party's lack of enthusiasm for reducing the harm caused by tobacco and the sorry state of the Māori Party now that its leadership has left the Parliament and it has far less influence in its role now. This was something that was a key priority for the Māori Party, and it has gone right on the back burner since Peter Sharples and Tariana Turia have left this House. And I think the Māori Party, frankly, are a shadow of what they could have been, especially in this area. Of course, in the last few years, the National Party has professed to have had a road to Damascus moment and has supported all those pieces of legislation to reduce the harm caused by tobacco. But we know that deep down inside, this still isn't at their core, this still isn't in their DNA. When you've got people like Chris Bishop saying that there are not any studies that suggest plain packaging will work at stopping people from taking up smoking or helping them to quit smoking, there's not one study to suggest that. You know that actually within the National Party caucus, this still isn't really, they don't really believe this stuff. Shane Retty might, he's sitting very quietly up the back, and I recall when Dr. Paul Hutchison crossed the floor to vote with the Labour government in favour of legislation to reduce the harm caused by tobacco. And I'm sure if the roles were reversed and this was a Labour bill, I think Shane Retty would be crossing the floor to support this legislation, because I doubt that a National Party in opposition would actually support this. They would use this to campaign and rail against the government. That's, the best indicator of future behaviour is prior behaviour, and that's the behaviour that we saw from the National Party every time Labour tried to do things to reduce the harm caused by tobacco. Let's not forget, of course, the boy wonder, Todd Barclay. He had a lot to say about tobacco control before he came into the House as well. He was another one of those tobacco lobbyists. Well, he was the one getting into the ear of... Sorry, what was that, Mr. Chair? Well, he was the one getting into the...
Well, what I would suggest... I suppose I should stand up if he's going to stand up. I would suggest that if we're going to keep it relevant, that what comments people may have said long before they came to Parliament, even in short lives, may not necessarily be applicable. And the difficult thing is, of course, as the Chair, I don't get to make a speech. I'd make a really good one on this. Oh. Point of order, the Honourable
Mr. Chair, I think that should be applied to the Minister, who made, I think, an unfortunate accusation against Barbara Stewart, that she was going to be speaking on behalf of the tobacco industry. And of course, as you know, no member can be accused of being in the pocket of anybody.
Let's just, interesting you should make that particular. I know have you called upon the Minister to apologise?
I can't do that.
No, well, let's just leave it at that. Let's just say we've had a few slaps either way, and let's just see if we can debate the issue. Debate the issue. Congratulations, Ian Lees-Galloway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just to say it wasn't that long before he came into Parliament. He's not old enough to have had long before he came into Parliament. Todd Barclay was railing against the idea that there was evidence to support having plain or standardised packaging for tobacco products. So, yes, we do support this because the evidence is clear that every step we take to clamp down on the tobacco industry, to reduce the prevalence, Mr. Chairman,
Ian Lees-Galloway,
to reduce the prevalence and the visibility of tobacco products has an impact. And as other members have said, including the Minister, that there is no one silver bullet. No one claims that this is the silver bullet. No one claims that excise tax increases are the silver bullet. No one claims that getting rid of advertising was the silver bullet. But putting all those things together over years, adding in education, they all have an impact. And this has always been the next logical step. And I hate it when we're beaten by the Aussies. I enjoyed watching the Bledisloe Cup match over the weekend. I enjoy the fact that we've held the Bledisloe Cup since 2002, and I love beating the Aussies, and I hate it when we get beaten by them. And it's sad that we, as a nation that in the past has been at the forefront of controlling tobacco, that has taken huge steps to reduce the harm caused by tobacco, allowed ourselves not just to be beaten by the Aussies, but once we were beaten by the Aussies, we then sat back and watched from a distance to see what they would do and what the impact would be on them before we as a nation had the courage to step up and actually do this. But it is good to see that this is being progressed. I would like to speak very briefly about the New Zealand First supplementary order papers. These seek to extend to have a long transition period between the current regime and when this regime comes into force. And actually I would reiterate what the Minister said. The industry, both the manufacturers of tobacco, large global companies that have the resources to change very quickly, and the retailers have known this is coming for a long time. They've known this is coming since 2013, and we've given them the transition period. We've given them plenty of warning by the government dragging its feet on this legislation, and in fact the bill, as it's written, gives them plenty of time to transition from the current regime to the new regime. If they're not getting ready for it now, then they've got a problem. They're not paying attention. If anybody who works in that industry ought to be preparing themselves for the time when standardised packaging comes into place. So we won't be supporting New Zealand First's SOPs. We think the bill as it's drafted does a good job, and we support the idea that we need to take one more step to reduce this harm. It's a product that kills 5,000 people a year when used as directed by the manufacturer. So yeah, we have lots of debate about lots of different substances, the harm caused by alcohol, the harm caused by illicit drugs. The difference between those and tobacco is, particularly alcohol and tobacco, is that alcohol is extremely harmful when abused. It's addictive. Lots of people abuse it. Lots of people get addicted to alcohol. But with tobacco, this is a product that when used as the industry expects you to use it, it kills half of the people who use it, and that amounts to 5,000 people a year. So I'm surprised, frankly, that any party is opposing this legislation. I'm surprised that it has taken us so long to progress this legislation, and I'm proud to be a member of a party that promoted this idea early and that has a long track record of supporting legislation that reduces the harm caused by tobacco, because anybody who opposes things that are proven to reduce the harm caused by tobacco has to seriously think about their priorities.
Barbara Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.